Welcome to Real Estate Investing Abundance, the show for busy, fulfilled professionals like you to learn how to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. Now, here is your host, Dr. Alan Lomax.
Hello, enlightened investors. I'm your host, Dr. Alan, and what a pleasure it is to be with you once again today. And I am excited to discover with you how we can stop chasing deals so we can spend our valuable time creating deals at will. Victor Menasce is a senior partner with Y Street Capital and host of the daily Real Estate Espresso Podcast. His firm specializes in new development projects across the United States and Canada. So, Victor, take us into the show by sharing with us a memorable experience from your formative years that helped you to be the person you are today.
Alan, great to be here. If I think back to my formative years, I had some amazing parents. My mother was the second woman in history to graduate in architecture from Cornell University.
Wow.
So she was blazing a trail. Of course, everyone in her office was male, and she was the lone female, and she was blazing a trail. She worked on some extraordinary landmark buildings in New York City, in Manhattan. And so as a young boy, I got to tour Manhattan and see those buildings that had my mom's name on the cornerstone. She told me in those days about how her father, my grandfather, was an inventor. I never met him. He died before I was born. But I had a file cabinet full of all of his patents and the prototype of his typewriter. He developed the very first daisy wheel concept before the IBM Selectric typewriter or any of those products had hit the market. And again, patent upon patent upon patent. And so my mother instilled in me at a very early age that I could be anything I wanted. I could invent anything I wanted. And even though I never met my grandfather, that stuck with me. A fuse was lit at a very early age.
Wow, that is amazing. And what a mother. The obstacles she must have had to overcome and meet to become the architect that she was. That's just a fantastic role model. Wow. What a way to get started in life. Well, yes. Tell us, what are your criteria for investing?
It's pretty simple. We like to invest in markets that are growing. We take the view that real estate is hyperlocal. So, we don't look at averages. We don't look at the macro numbers that you would read on the front page of the Wall Street Journal because they're meaningless. They don't apply to your specific situation. They obfuscate the truth, which is really what lies in your own hyperlocal situation. Now, we're active in multiple different markets. So you can say, how is it, Victor, some dude living up in Ottawa, Canada, you can invest hyperlocally in markets that you're not part of. And it really involves developing that local knowledge in those micro markets. We can't be experts, obviously, in every market, but we have to meet certain criteria. It's got to be a growing market. In our case, we like to develop new product because we think there's a lot of pent-up demand in the marketplace for a product that's differentiated in the marketplace. And we like to stay out of the commodity end of the market, where if you think about even the term commodity, it's always based on competing on the basis of price. And that's the race to the bottom. So many industries are involved in that race to the bottom, whether it's Walmart, whether it's the airline industry, all of these industries, oil, gas, steel, they're all commodities. And the business goes to the lowest bidder, not the highest bidder.
Exactly. So explain to me how this applies to real estate in terms of how are you staying out of the commodity market within real estate? And what do you mean by commodities when you're talking about real estate?
You can take an apartment and you can price it on a dollar per square foot basis and say, okay, so apartments are renting at $2 a square foot. And you can take that commodity view of things. And you talk to real estate agents, they will take that commodity view as well. On the other hand, you could take an apartment complex and put a $500,000 swimming pool in it, which is more than any homeowner would ever put in their own individual home. So maybe they're exiting their 4-bedroom house in the suburbs and looking to rent in their early retirement years, maybe have a place that's lock and leave. Now, you could price it on a dollar per square foot basis and pursue that race to the bottom, or you can give someone a pathway to something that they wouldn't have had any other way, where they look at it and say, wow, the amenities in this facility are extraordinary. I can give up my gym membership. There's an amazing pool. All of these other things that play into the lifestyle that they're seeking, you don't monetize on a dollar per square foot basis. So it's a different sell.
Can you give us an example of a property that you have done that with?
Absolutely. We just finished a project in Lake Charles, Louisiana. The complex is called the Sage Oak of Lake Charles. And this is a boutique assisted living project. It's 80 beds. Now, you can look at assisted living, and again, on a commodity basis and say, all right, people can pay so much per bed per month. But then you look at what everyone else is doing. All the big box facilities, they have a caregiver ratio of 15 to 1 during the day and 30 or 32 to 1 at night. And if you're that person waking up at 2 in the morning and you need to go to the bathroom and you've got a caregiver ratio of 32 to 1, you could be waiting a long time. So the commodity end of the business focuses on numbers. The specialty end of the business says, well, what do people really need? So at the foundation of our product offer, it's 3 simple values: better care, better food, and better communication. Now, how does that relate to real estate? Well, if you're going to put better care, meaning a better caregiver ratio, and you're going to still make it affordable, it's not going to be cheap necessarily, but you're going to still make it affordable for that perhaps premium segment in the market, then you need to find a way to save somewhere in the budget so you can put more money towards staffing, because staffing is your number one expense in senior housing. So we designed these buildings that are a little bit smaller on a per square foot basis compared with the real estate that goes into the big box facilities. It's more of a boutique offering. We built a campus of 16-bed homes. So there's 5 homes, each 16 beds, and for a total of 80. And these buildings are designed in such a way that the rooms are certainly of ample size, but we focus the amenities in the common areas. We designed it in such a way that we can get better leverage. We're all on one level. We don't have elevators, so you're not dividing your staff between floors, things like that. So you get better utilization of all of the resources. And it involves just taking a different perspective on how you design the product. And when I say design the product, it's not just the building, it's from an end-to-end perspective. It's thinking through that service offering from start to finish.
We'll be right back after a brief announcement. Are you a busy professional, passionate about the work of your calling, yet realize that even though you love what you are doing, you're exchanging your time for money? You know that if you were to lose the ability to exchange time for money, your financial well-being will be in jeopardy. If you can relate, I have great news. Steed Tucker Capital is an investment company designed for professionals to develop financial independence built on solid passive real estate investments. Remove the anxiety of an uncertain financial future and go to steedtucker.com. Get your free one-page 10-step guide to passive real estate investing. And so you can apply this really to any kind of real estate situation, whether it is self-storage, mobile home parks, apartments, senior living. From what I'm gathering here, you're taking an out-of-the-box perspective on any particular property. So I'd like to go into this a little bit more if we could here.
Of course.
If you could take us from day one when you are property prospecting and take us from the visioning perspective to the decision to actually purchase, and from the purchasing to actually developing that property.
Maybe before I do that, let's back up a little bit and go to, what you highlighted as the outline for today's talk, which is really how to focus more on creating opportunities than chasing opportunities. Because let's face it, today there's more money chasing deals than there are qualified deals in the marketplace.
Absolutely.
So you get into that auction environment, and you are always going to end up paying more in an auction than if you're the sole bidder. That's absolutely the case. I mean,
right.
We know so many people that are paying in multiple offers over asking price in today's environment. I don't want to ever be the winning bidder with 19 other bidders behind me. It's almost guaranteeing that I'm going to pay too much. Mm-hmm. So I want to get out of that auction environment. And so if you adopt that scarcity mentality and say, well, there's a finite set of deals out there and you're all scrambling over those few breadcrumbs, well, then you're going to be stuck in the auction. But on the other hand, if you have a vision for what that finished product could be that solves a need in the marketplace, then you can create those opportunities at will, because there's no competition with anyone else for the idea that's in my own head or your own mind, because that's private. You have that in your own mind and that's it. So there isn't that kind of feeding frenzy happening for those off-market, off-the-radar type opportunities. And that's what we aim to focus on. When you look at a piece of land, you might see it for what is its as-is value. You look at a building and see it for its as-is value. But we look at it through the lens of what could it be and what does the market need? And is there an opportunity to transform it? So, we started this approach, at the bottom of the economic downturn in the wake of 2008. At that time, you could buy properties for well below construction costs. So of course it didn't make sense to build because you could buy things for less than the cost of construction. But we went through a period of almost 5 years of very little in the way of new construction in the whole nation. So that told us immediately that there was a lot of pent-up demand for new product. So how could you create new product without necessarily the full-on cost of new products? Still do something that would be price competitive. And that got us literally into rehabbing apartment buildings. And when I say rehabbing, we would literally keep the exterior structure, we would demolish the inside, put a new building on the inside, and have a historic facade, but essentially a brand new building on the inside. And we were able to get very strong valuations when we did that. So, we can talk a little bit about that. There's an entire strategy around how to do that. And every city in America has those conditions that really lend themselves very well to redeveloping things that are close to the urban core.
Well, take us through a living example
Sure.
of a project that you've done.
So we call this strategy buy on the line, move the line. And so that line is that line that exists in every city in America. Sometimes it's a hard line, meaning it's not a movable boundary, but most of the time, that boundary is arbitrary. And on one side of the line, you have that hot gentrified neighborhood with the art galleries and the coffee shops and people walking their pets and all of that. And then on the, go a couple blocks in the other direction and you're in the hood. Mm-hmm. And often there's no real reason why that line exists where it does. So if you take property that's just on the wrong side of that line and redevelop it, well, guess what? Now that line is on the other side of your property. And then you can do it again and again and again. Now, if you just do one or two, or if you stray too far from the line, it'll probably fail. But if you put a little bit of scale behind it, the marketplace takes notice and says, oh, the line has moved. I get it. Now, when you're buying that land typically for a fraction of what would be in the hot neighborhood next door, and the completed product, well, there's no comps in the hood. So where are you going to get your valuations? You're going to get it within a small radius, which is from the hot neighborhood next door. So you can often create a tremendous amount of value by buying right, buying at a steep discount to the market, because you're buying on the wrong side of the line. And simply by redeveloping, you can get some valuations, maybe not 100 cents on the appraised value, but you'll get in the mid to high 90s. And now you've created a tremendous amount of lift without being in that frenzied auction environment. So, I guess you asked for a specific example. I'll give you one. I'll give you a specific address. And we've done a bunch of these, so I could give you a dozen, but we don't have time for that. So the idea here is to illustrate that there's a process and a system, not just a one-off, fluke. So the address I'll give you is 1228 North 25th Street in Philadelphia. This is a 10-unit apartment building that we built from scratch. It was an assembly of 3 lots.
You said a 10 unit?
10 units, yeah.
Okay.
8 units, 2 bedrooms, and 2 units that were 1 bedroom. We bought the land. It was an assembly of 3 lots. We bought the land for all 3 lots for $135,000.
Wow.
And we built these 10 units. It's not an A class. I would give it a solid B plus. was custom designed. It's not a very wide property. It's only 33 or 35 feet wide. It's not very wide. It goes fairly deep. And our thesis was, well, maybe if we could get, $1,200 a month in rent for these apartments, we'd be doing great. And that's what we put in our pro forma. We built the entire building. This was completed in 2014, I think, if my memory serves me correctly. And we built that building at a hard construction cost of $88 a square foot.
Wow.
So our entire investment in the project, land, hard costs, soft costs, everything, was $1.05 million for this 10-unit apartment building. We got it leased up in about 5 months. The upper units were renting for $1,450 a month. We were, doing above our pro forma in the rents. And so we went to refinance the building, and we got a valuation of $1.8 million. The bank refinanced at 1.3. And if you remember, we invested $1.05 million. So we got to put a few nickels in our pocket. At the end of the refinance process, of course, we paid 100% of the investors their initial capital, and we were left holding a building that was producing decent positive cash flow with no cash tied up in it, which is, by the way, the definition of a BRRR. You can do that on a single-family home. You can do it on a 10-unit building like I just described. You can do it on a 200-unit complex. The math is the same.
Well, that is brilliant and to some degree gutsy, but it makes it less risky having people out there like you to lead the way. So very interesting, very fascinating concept. You have to know your neighborhood, and you've been clear about the fact that you know the neighborhoods you're going into, and they're super local, and they're on the fringe of growth neighborhoods, essentially. And yeah, I really, really am fascinated with this concept. But we are getting close to the end of our show here. So tell us about your role as project leader.
So today we're involved in probably close to a dozen projects in multiple different communities. We are building residential subdivisions in multiple cities, taking raw agricultural land, taking it through the entitlement process. We've grown the organization. Our staff meetings today, 9:15 every morning, on average have between 8 and 9 people in the staff meeting. So we built a reasonable sized team. And the focus is on creating these opportunities on a larger scale. It turns out that it's easier to go bigger. If I was to go back in time and redo the early portions of my career as a real estate investor, I would have gone for bigger projects much, much sooner. Because small projects have one thing that's going against them. They don't generate enough income to afford the team that you need to do this on a sustainable, scalable basis. Whereas larger projects throw off enough cash that you can actually fund that and have a sustainable business.
There's also more money for larger projects too. It's easier.
Absolutely. So the key is getting the right people in the team. So today, I'm front and center and raising a lot of the capital. I don't do all of it myself. Definitely involved in the design concept. We want to develop a product that's going to be a winner in the marketplace. So I play a very hands-on role in designing and specifications, although of course we hire architects and engineers and specialists for all of those roles, but we're very hands-on with that. And then of course, making sure that all of the right people are in the right chairs for the execution of the projects. That's the key. Because at the end of the day, a good deal badly managed, of course, is no deal. So it all comes down, the only thing that's a real differentiator, apart from did you design a good product, is did you execute?
Absolutely. Well, this has just been terrific. Lots of great information. Thinking outside the box is always a challenge to do, but almost always can be very, very rewarding. And you certainly led the way in doing that in some remarkable ways. I really like that concept of comparing real estate to the commodity markets and looking outside of those markets to find the specialty markets and interests. Very interesting concept there. Well, Victor, tell us and our listeners how it is that we can get in touch with you and what it is that you have to offer.
Well, I'm the host of the Real Estate Espresso Podcast, a daily show 7 days a week. So I'd love to have you as a listener. Also the author of the book Magnetic Capital. So if access to capital is one of the things that's holding you back. I think the concepts that are in the book Magnetic Capital, born out of my years in raising capital, both in real estate and in my prior career in the tech industry, could unlock the keys to the kingdom for you. So the book is called Magnetic Capital, and you can get access to both at my website, which is at victorjm.com. That's victorjm.com.
Excellent. Definitely going to pursue that myself. Well, Victor, I have one last question before we close out here, and that is, and this is actually a multiple layered question here. Share with us one of your most difficult setbacks in life, and it could be related to real estate or maybe not. But how did you come through that time, and what lessons are learned from that experience?
Wow. I don't know if there's so many.
That's life, huh?
It is. And you learn from the bad times, from the mistakes that were made. I'm going to go with this one. This is from early in my career, having moved into the world of real estate investing. And I exited my technology career, held, senior roles in microprocessor design. So, I thought I was hot stuff, and started working with some folks out of Chicago, and ended up selecting the wrong business partners, and ended up having a partner that stole from us. And, to the point where even though he was a partner in the project, he was also the GC and put a mechanics lien on the property to prevent us from selling the property until he got his fictitious invoices paid. And so that was very difficult. It meant that not only was I not going to get paid for those years of hard work, our investors were in jeopardy as well. In the end, we managed to negotiate a settlement. We managed to make sure that all of our investors were made whole. Some of them made some return, not a huge return, but some return. And for that time period, I made zero. And so it really taught me very painfully that it's never, ever, ever about the deal, because all of these deals were great deals. But because we had the wrong people, we had no chance of being successful. It always comes down to having the highest quality people in your team. And I remind myself of that every day. And whenever something goes wrong in a project, we even had something go wrong in the past week, it's always traceable down to one thing. We had the wrong people in the wrong chair doing something that was critical for the project. And it's a lesson that I have learned, having to relearn. And I'm sure your listeners can probably resonate with this as well.
Well, that had to be extraordinarily disappointing. And at a very early point in your career, it had to discourage you tremendously. So how did you actually come back from that?
I had good mentors. And what they taught me was that even from a low point, the key is not to put your foot on the brake. It's in fact to put your foot on the gas. That's the way to climb out of it. Because putting your foot on the brakes simply, all that does is freeze the status quo. It doesn't get you velocity in the direction you want to go. Your present circumstance doesn't define your destination. All it is your present circumstance. So get going in the right direction with the right trajectory at the right velocity, and put your energies towards that. The rest is all a sunk cost. And I've internalized that. We suffer setbacks all the time. And yet on the whole, en masse, we are enormously successful. So yeah, that's just life. And I carry that with me every day.
Well, very disappointing, but some excellent lessons, wonderful advice that came from it. Victor, I'm so happy to have met you today and delighted that you were with us. Fascinating episode. So thank you so much, Victor.
My pleasure. Thanks very much.
Thank you for tuning in to Real Estate Investing Abundance, brought to you by Steve Talker Capital, a company working for passionate professionals like you to develop financial independence built on solid, passive real estate investments. As part of our efforts to make the world a better place, Steve Talker Capital contributes to activities and organizations committed to better understand the equine. These endeavors attempt to enhance the human treatment of horses worldwide. Steve Talker Capital, working for a world where all creatures, great and small, flourish abundantly. For resources to develop your financial independence, connect with us at stevetalker.com.